And so yet another installment into the hidden history of the African American fighting man. You know, I've often been asked where one can actually see tangible evidence of the history that I give you all the time regarding African American fighting men, particularly here in Mississippi. And I'd like to do that. You've heard me mention on many occasions Chalmette Cemetery or Vicksburg. Most national cemeteries is where you would find African American soldiers, literally, particularly during the Civil War, and even for that matter after wars thereafter. The national cemeteries are cemeteries that were, should I say, integrated, one could argue, some of the first, particularly after the Civil War. Vicksburg Cemetery has only 3 Confederates buried there. You heard me right. Only 3 of the enemy forces of these United States are buried at Vicksburg, there in Mississippi. Huge cemetery. Thousands of individuals buried there. Close to 7,000, maybe even 8,000 African Americans are buried at Vicksburg. You heard me right. Former U.S. colored troops. And not all of them are from Mississippi, by the way. However, Mississippi did send over 17,000 African Americans right off the plantation into the Civil War to fight for their families. You can also find African Americans buried there in Chalmette, Louisiana, in the National Cemetery there. And notice I'm saying National Cemetery. And by so doing, you don't hear me speak of particularly Confederates being buried there. It is because typically the Confederates were buried in their own cemeteries. In other words, most of the battles happened in the South. And unless they were buried on the battlefield, like in and around Gettysburg or the like, then they were taken back home or buried into the local cemeteries in the South. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the national cemeteries were those who were defenders of the nation. Confederates were not defenders of the nation. We wouldn't have a nation had they won. So for those of you who are looking for tangible evidence, something in the way of a tombstone, I would highly recommend that you go to Chalmette, Louisiana, or go to Vicksburg. But brace yourself, because you will see a myriad of names that suggest to you how important you are and how important your descendants were, who were, by the way, victorious. They won. And every tombstone you see to that Negro soldier who fought and died for this great country of mine should be honored as a hero. However, when you also go to Chalmette, Louisiana, you will also see buried there tombstones of individuals who were there going back to Andrew Jackson, where he requested that free people of color and others, Negroes enslaved, would come forward to defend the new country of the United States. No, he literally begged them. Am I right? Do you have that over there? Okay, we'll do that tomorrow because I really want my audience to hear that here. And I know that live you won't be able to hear what Ro is saying right now. We're going to cure that. So there you have it for the person who's asking. And it's a little known history, evidence. You understand, ladies and gentlemen, that most African Americans in Mississippi are not aware of who's buried at Vicksburg. Most. Actually, it's only been here recently that there was even a statue that was erected to the brave exploits of those U.S. colored troops and others. The other men who were buried there are not, most of which are not from Mississippi. Only 3 Confederates are buried there. The rest are from places as far away as Nebraska. You'll see all kinds of units buried there out of the tens of thousands who are buried there at Vicksburg. And I would highly recommend you go there. You know, with that in mind, folks, I was sent a letter from a young mom who, and I told you, folks, I stop everything for family. And she was asking for some assistance. Her son is currently incarcerated. Drug charges, in, well, I'm not going to say what county he's in, but he's in Mississippi. And her request here is what could she do to keep him from going back to jail? So I'm going to read just a little part of this, and then I'm going to respond. And I hope you accept this in love. I really do, because I'm gonna be as candid as I can be. I'm gonna start it here. She says, "This is my son's second trip to the jail. He is on papers and could very well be facing the penitentiary. He has a felony charge against him. I am not going to tell you, Mr. Daniels, that he is innocent. I can tell you that he has not been doing what he needs to do as a young 28-year-old son. He's in and out of jail. He is in the drug game, in parentheses, dope game. And he feels that somehow or another that is a far better alternative than going out and getting a job like everybody else. He says he can't make the money he makes by doing what everybody else does. However, this is his third time being incarcerated, and he could be possibly facing a whole lot more time, and he can't seem to figure out that that working like everybody else underscore could keep him from being incarcerated. Is there anything you could say to him? He told me that sometimes he's able to hear your show while incarcerated." Well, that should tell you that it's somewhere. Well, I guess it could. Right? Actually, the Scott sisters heard us up there in Scott County, actually. So maybe they have access to online. It doesn't necessarily have to be local. But she goes on and very tearfully asks for some help and some suggestions as far as attorney and so forth. And I've responded. But I want to say something else, and I think it needs to be said, and it's about time, you know. And I think I'm the one to say it. You know, for those of you who think that somehow or another you can get into the drug game, and that's a game that you somehow or another created, you just BSing yourself. This game has been there. The whole drug game has been there since Cain killed Abel. I mean, it boils down to that. The crime game, the thug game is nothing new. I think Cain did it with a stick, and you will use a gun. The first thing you've got to understand is that you cannot pimp the system. You can't use the system. The system's going to pimp you. And at this very time, you've become its whore. You've become the bitch that you always thought you wouldn't be. Because now, see, you're the one who are giving a paycheck to those individuals that you think you hate most. You've become the slave. You've become that ability to keep someone else working. That very person that you avoid every time. That person who you think want to catch you riding dirty, and is now your master. It's about time that we own up to this whole game. And I'm going to tell you something. I think there are some assumptions that it was created. That triple beams and reefer and cocaine was just somehow or another created in your generation. Trust me on this. Sigmund Freud was indulging a long time ago, and he couldn't handle it. Rather than pimping the system, my friend, let me just tell you what you are. You are the prostitute. You see, what happens here is that you've been led to believe that you are the individual. You got it all figured out, just like any other whore on the stroll. You know exactly where you can go to make this happen, and all you looking for is a John. And that'll be it. You'll do your due and make your move, and all of a sudden, you can live the lavish life. Get yourself a limousine and some bling bling and put you some rims on it. And draw all the attention to yourself as if somehow or another the rest of us don't look at you and say, how the hell you get that? You ain't working. Well, let's just check you out. You know, you have your mama here writing me, begging for some kind of assistance to tell you something that you already know. You see, if this is your third ticket to the big house, then you obviously ain't a good drug dealer. The one thing you haven't learned about my generation is this, is that you don't get caught When you get caught, you're not a dealer. You are a jailbird. You are that individual who more than likely will roll over in the mist and turn in somebody else. It's about time that somebody look you in the eye and say to you, stop pimping your mama and everybody else who love you just to get your little ass out of jail. I mean, if you're really that big, you wouldn't be begging right now. Oh, can you get me a lawyer? Mom, you gonna be able to play bond? Put something on the books for me. Be a man. You take that. Let me just tell you what you're missing. I don't have to tell you. Let me just remind you. Anybody who's ever been there, anybody who even have a clue as to what it's like going to jail would not want to go back there again, because you're going to miss something. You're going to miss your lady getting up in the morning and smelling grits and eggs. Seeing her dance around in that old robe with the torn pocket, watching her body move under it. You ain't going to see that no more. You're gonna miss those times on Sunday morning when maybe the kids were getting up, going outside to play or going to Sunday school. You know, when you and her kind of playing, she gets out of bed and she looks at you and she smiles just to confirm that you still looking. And you are still looking. You won't have that. You're gonna miss those days when your little baby girl comes up with banana breath, you know, just after eating her cereal, having a banana, and she runs to you in her little pajamas and jumps in your arms, and you are the strongest person on earth for her. How could you miss that? Or your little boy, the one that got gum in his head, going to his game, him watching you instead of watching the ball. And you tell him, boy, you need to watch the ball. Don't watch me, look at the ball. And you just crack up laughing at him.